Welcome to the Point of No Return podcast, a show at the intersection of technology and strategy. On this show, we interview industry leaders and experts to better understand how they think about strategy during this time of exponential progress.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Point of No Return podcast. On today's show, I spoke with Simon Ferragne, CEO and founder of Tracktik. Simon is one of the entrepreneurs that I've met that just exudes this passion about his company, about what he's doing, that's really infectious. We had a great conversation that I really personally enjoyed. So I really hope that you'll be able to take away something from it. A little bit about Simon and his background. He has over 13 years of experience in software development, where he's solidified his position in delivering tech-based solutions that help organizations in different vertical markets. His passion and determination really kind of came through in the conversation. We spoke about how he developed Tracktik, which is a disruptive solution in their market in the security workforce management space. His leadership led to remarkable and rapid growth, which we talk about. And his core belief is that we can define tomorrow's technologies today. And then we really spoke about how he got interested in technology, the importance of really solving customer problems, right? I think the customer issue came up quite a few times. This concept of artistic innovation, which I found quite neat, focusing on the right things and not just on sales, which are a consequence of working on the right things. His evolution as the CEO of the company and why he's excited for the future of Tracktik. Simon is an entrepreneur in the true sense of the word. I learned a ton from him, and I hope that you do as well. Simon, thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really happy you're taking the time. I've obviously been following your company for a while, and you guys have been on this massive growth spurt. And I think yesterday you announced that you guys were part of the Growth 500 3 years in a row. So
yes,
really cool to see a local Montreal company with such great growth.
Thank you very much.
My first question, I'm always curious maybe to dive into what got you interested in technology?
Oh, wow. This goes back to a really, really long time. My father, when we were kids, were at those little iMacs and even older computers. I don't remember the name. And it was a passion for him. It was not his job. It was a gym teacher. And it was his passion. And it was like building little games and software. And we looked at it and it would he teach us how to do basic coding if you want. So myself and my older brother are software engineer. He's an official engineer and more an entrepreneur in the space. And then I would say 20 years ago, I started building the websites when the internet became this big thing and mainstream. Then I was traveling the world at that time, and I built my first website was ferragne.com, and I put my pictures of my travels so my family could share it. So we're talking about 1999. So I just went from there, and I think the creative side of me, I was building Flash websites and regular websites. And then the web has evolved a lot. And I realized that, wow, I can actually solve business problems with that. So really early on, in my software career, I joined one of my friends at a printing company, and he wanted to scale way more. And then I said wait, why don't we do a FTP transfer to start sending files? And then I had this bubble up to be let's do an e-commerce so people can order and build their business cards or any marketing material online. And then it's well, now that we have that, now let's do all of the production systems so everything is automated and all of the printing press receive all the package by themselves, and we remove the humans from that so we can take more volume. And then let's plug shipping with that. So very early on, I was really passionate about solving business problems with technology, and this has been for the last 20 years. I've been really this has been my passion. My mother always said oh, you should have been a doctor. I'm well, I'm a doctor. I'm helping businesses solve problems, right? So, yeah.
Did you always think that you were going to launch companies? Did you think as a young kid? I
did. When I was a young kid, I remember at one point I built a CD for businesses, and I find some local companies that I had one banker, one that was providing a software, and I built this little CD that I would distribute to companies, and then try to get a cut of if they buy the services of people. So I think I always had that entrepreneur in me, but it really bubbled up after working with that printing company with my friends. I joined a company in Silicon Valley, and then I was introduced to the overall like startup ecosystem. So we built. I was working remote, which was interesting, but we built like this type of Foursquare for neighborhoods platform. And then I was like, okay, so we went, there was an article on TechCrunch, and then there was some funding involved. And then I had no idea about all of this world of startup and the venture capital that invest and like how fast you can build a business. So that really intrigued me. And I was like, wow, this is exciting. You're actually like building stuff and you're actually like growing really, really fast. But as I like to say is like, the hardest thing about business is finding a real problem to solve, and finding a problem that's not being solved well or that's not being solved at all. So for many people have ideas, but really what it comes down to is like, okay, you got an idea, and a lot of people come to see me and say, hey, Simon, I have this idea, I want to run it with you, see what you think. And then a lot of the time those ideas are like, well, this is already been solved like in many ways. Like, what are you bringing more that doesn't already exist? So I think, like I mentioned, is like finding a real problem that's not addressed the right way and like focusing on it and just being good at it. So I think that's, this is when I realized that that's something that was scalable, that I could build a business.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a great insight, right? So like find, product market fit, for instance, right? Like you're saying, it's another buzzy way of saying solve real world shit, right?
Yeah. And it's like, product market fit, it's not only a buzzword, it's a reality. If you're not providing value, if you're not, if you want people to pay, like I'm in the business to business. This doesn't apply to like business to consumer products the way it is right now. But if you have an idea and you think it's gonna solve a problem, okay, and you really think it's gonna solve a problem, you gotta find someone that's ready to pay for it. So if nobody wants to like give you $1 for you solving the problem, then you didn't find a problem that's worth the investment. And so a lot of people that we see and a lot of startups that struggle, I find, is that they have an idea which sounds amazing, but then it's really abstract in how the value is going to get out of that. So businesses, I run a business now and I understand it more than ever, is like we pay for what brings us value. And value for business either could go from streamlining your internal processes, making more sales. It means making more profits, adding value to your services. So if you're not bringing tangible value to a business and you're trying to be in the business to business side, you're in the wrong place. Yeah.
I'd love to dive into the inception story of Tracktik, right? Because I think it's a good segue of, back in 2011 when you met in, that famous meeting in Florida. Yeah. I'd love to understand a little bit the inception and how that idea came about.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah. So I met this person and that person having some shots and was, so I talked to him and he's like, I'm like, what's happening? You're celebrating or like you're going crazy? And he's like, well, no, I'm actually I'm going crazy because now me and my wife had a security firm. We just went from 50 to 100 employees. And he's like, I'm like, wow, that's great. Congratulations. It's like, you double your staff, you double things. Like, no, it's not great. It's ruining my marriage. Like people are not showing up to work. Like it's me and my wife managing this in Excel. We have, I'm a whole police officer, I think, or something like that. It was like not a business person. It was someone that came out and like started his own little business and it scaled. And I was shocked, and I asked the person, I'm like, you don't have a real-time system. You don't have something that would provide all those insights and would fix all those problems. And he said, yes, I do have a real-time system. My clients call me when they have a problem in real time. I'm like, okay, that's not what I meant though. So that discussion just stayed there. But a few months later, I'm always trying to find a solution. But before finding a solution, I need to find a real problem. And a few months later, like this is where the near field communication came out in Android 2.7. So you could scan those little checkpoints, or you can scan those little tags, or you can pay now with your phones. So this technology, I'm like, oh, this is a new technology. And for me, when I see something new and shiny on the market, I tend to brainstorm around it. So the new capacities, right? So every big steps in the history of technology have been provided not necessarily by invention, but by new capacities. So now AI is a new capacity in the world, but and NFC is like much lower impact than AI, but it was like this new thing. So I started brainstorming about this. In Europe, there was already some systems that were integrated with bus passes and all this. But then I remember that discussion. I'm like, holy crap. I can have like those security guards or those patrollers or those employees like use this mobile device now and scan those tokens. And now I have a real-time dashboard that would provide all the insights from that guy, like he could manage by mass instead of like having foot on the ground, checking on people manually. They could like making sure that all of the protocols and best practice of what they're trying to of the service they're trying to give to their clients would be like managed by this system. So then I'm like, well, the first thing I did, and this really comes back to what we talk about, market fit. The first thing I did, and I tried, and before that idea with the NFC, I looked at other stuff. I did my research, but then I went to speak to someone on the ground. I went to see somebody that, not the same guy. I lost connection with the guy, but I went to see like a gated community in Florida, and I went to speak to the security director, and I said, would it make sense? And I explained them, and I showed them a small token, and I was like, like nothing exists. And the answer I got was, I don't believe you can do that. So that was my first, I'm like, oh, okay, now I found a problem. I found something. And the reaction, his name was Mark, his reaction was like so intense. I'm like, not only do I get a real problem, but I got an urgent problem to solve. So then I went back and I just put my heads, I built the first Android application in 2 weeks, went back there and I said, look, I have a prototype. You want to try it? He was like, absolutely. Then we installed it. We actually, and then they were like amazed by it. But then I started to realize that, it was nice that guards could scan checkpoints, was kind of replacing obsolete technologies of WAN, they call it WAN, that doesn't give you feedback. Now there's a screen, there's real time, it was a big improvement. But I'm like, this is still a commodity. I mean, you don't build a $1 billion business based on that. But then I started looking at digging into the industry, and that was the tip of the iceberg. And I started to understand more and more about the industry and their challenges. And something that seems pretty, from the exterior, seems like a very simple business. But if you dig into it, it's a business where there's like 10,000, 100,000 of employees working for a company, working in all different places across the United States. So imagine, you have like 5,000 sites with 10,000 employees working at different places. How do you manage this? It's impossible. So how do you keep track of the quality of service that they're offering? How do you make sure that your employees are safe? How do you make sure that all the data that you're collecting can be massaged to bring back some meaningful information to the clients? And then I just start digging and working with clients to understand the problems. As a doctor would do with his patients, okay, tell me where the pains are, and then going pain by pain, trying to innovate and trying to find a solution. And I think this is something very important that I want, and if there's any entrepreneur that's listening, that is very important that I did, that I think was part of our initial success. Good. So there was already some, I wouldn't say there was other companies out there, been around for 10 to 15 years, been trying to solve the problem. But obviously, looking at that it was not solved, my initial iteration, I would say, of the product, I purposely didn't want to take a look at anything that was on the market. We always say, do your market research, study your competitor products. This makes sense from a business perspective, looking at the market size, looking at all that. But for me, I see building software as an artistic, how can I say this? Endeavor. Okay. And what happened for a lot of people who are trying to and do too much research on the competitor and go too much details in the products is they build a better version of. So a better version of is not innovation. It's micro improvements. You're not solving problems. You're just improving a bit, right? So, and we see it now, and you see it now with cell phones. I think we've hit a plateau of what cell phone technology can deliver in terms of new values. Now we have those big companies' keynotes, and they release the new phones that they do, It's like, well, there's nothing impressive anymore. But when the first the iPhone came out, it was revolutionary because it was disruptive. It was like, okay, now we can do that. So to get back to this, so I purposely didn't look at what was on the market, because the rationale behind it is like, I want to come up with something different, and I want to look at from my perspective of how I would solve this problem, this problem. And by doing that, when I came on the market and I showed what I did, people were not ready. They were like, well, we're not ready for it. Like, oh my God, it's so different, but it's totally aligned with what we're trying to do. So I didn't build a better version of this. I actually rethinked the process. So that was my first, I think, when I speak to entrepreneurs that have an idea and like when I go into the B2B software space, that's always like something important that I give, because now you don't compete for the same thing. Like you create your own breed, you create your own category. It's something totally different. Yeah. So when somebody would say, well, what about this guy? I'm like, well, we're different. Look at that. It's totally new. It's refreshing. So that helped a lot, I would say. Of course, I failed on many points, like looking and learning and like, oh yeah, I should have done it this way. But it gave an overall user experience that was totally different. It was in the market. That was refreshing for the industry. Yeah.
You brought up some really good points, Simon, that are great insights that I'd like to unpack. Like the first one being is, this concept of artistic innovation, or other ways of, calling it a blue ocean, for instance, right? So things that haven't been created are the biggest opportunities versus looking at incremental innovations, right? Yep. Or sustaining innovations. Yeah. I find that's a tremendous insight, because if you really want to create a space to have rapid growth, well, you have to do something that someone's not doing right now.
Absolutely. And this is, I'm super happy we're talking about this, because 2019 for Tracktik is going to be rethinking again. So, I built the first framework of the product. Now it's going to be like 5 years and a bit. So 5 years ago, we built it not knowing exactly where it would be today. And most of all, we built it not having the toolkits and all of the technology that we have accessible today. So the last 5 years was adding features, improving some of the features that we have, understanding and gathering all this information. So we provide this. But now for 2019, our Tracktik company roadmap, or like the product roadmap, is going to be, because we're covering enough ground in terms of features. But now what we're focusing on is like, let's rethink. Now AI is available, machine learning is available, new front ends that are super responsive are available. So the mission of Tracktik for 2019 is rebuilding and rethinking every one of our features, of our value-driven features, to the next level. Because now we know we have like 400 security firms using us, and I think it's more than that now, across the world, and we've collected so many insights on different type of best practices and challenges. So now we have so much knowledge around this, and we want to go back screen by screen and really rethink it.
Do you find it's harder to keep that ethos, right? Like from the early days where it's, just you coding and like you're able to develop something, versus today you're 75 employees, global traction. Do you find that spirit of continuous innovation, continuous rethinking a challenge?
It's always a challenge. I'd say, and this is it's part of the growing pain. So, and it depends on, it really depends at the core of how you see a business. So I know we got investments also to help us with the growth. So there was always a fine line between what your mission is and your company objectives, right? So when you start being too much sales driven and you start like focusing on like numbers and number of leads and number of closing things. So I find it's the wrong way to look at building a successful business. For me, the focus is, if we build valuable products, if we solve real problems for clients, if we help them on the top line of the business, the bottom line of business, the efficiency of the business, and if we keep focusing on building value and building products that brings that value, the sales is going to follow, the retention rate is going to be through the roof, the company is going to grow in the right mission.
Yeah, I agree with that, Simon, because it depends on the importance you accord to those metrics, right? So sales are a lagging indicator of strategic success, right? It means
Absolutely.
that something you did 2 years ago is proving today in terms of value, right?
Yep.
So customers pay, and they're paying because they're experiencing that value. But higher up in the funnel, to your point, is where the real decisions are made, right? Questions of like, what problems are we really solving for customers?
Yes.
And how do we retain them, to your point? I'd like to maybe backtrack just an instant, because I'm curious, back to the early days, what was the moment that you realized, okay, I have something here that's bigger than myself, that made you say, you know what, I'm going to hit, the gas pedal, I'm going to go get investors, I'm going to hire people. Curious to see like that moment in time.
Well, there's many, I think the psychological journey it's my first company, so. And at the beginning, I always thought like, I'll just build a software, I'll put it online, people are going to go there and register them and so on. So, but the reality is like, it's not how it works, right? You need to build a company, you need to build a team, you need to build a culture around that team, which is the glue that makes everybody together. I think the biggest moment where I realized that I had something, when without calling people, I started getting like calls without having an official website. It was like there was no advertising. People were like, learned that this site started doing it. And when I got some inbound traffic of like people calling me and say, I heard you working on this, we're interested. So I was like, oh my God, this is going to be like, without having to push for sales or like doing some, like people were coming to me and say, I want you to solve my problems. And that was really, really early in the journey. I'm like, okay, this is what's happening. So at that moment, I was with my so wife, we're not married, but my girlfriend Julie, and like she was pregnant. She like, we know, like, I had a good, comfortable job. I was fine with a company in Silicon Valley. I had this little thing running on the side, but then I'm like, wow, this is happening right now. And I went to speak to Julie, and I said, look, I know you're pregnant. I know we're gonna like take a huge risk here. We're living in a semi-basement apartment, like a bachelor apartment. And I'm like, look, let's do this. Let's jump. I think we have really something big here. So that was I remember that moment like very clearly. So it's like one of the moments I'm like, I took that one decision that changed the rest of my life. And that moment was really like that time when I went to see Julie and I said, you got to tell me, because we're going to be in this together for a wild ride. And then her answer was like, Simon, if you don't do it, I know you'll be miserable for the rest of your life. So let's do it. And then I think after that, we got interested from investors. They put some money inside, and then we doubled, and then got more investors coming in, and then like the sales, we tripled the company really fast. We tripled the second year. Now we doubled the third year. We doubled again the fourth year. So I'm like, it's been like a series of like awesome wins through that. A lot of experience. Like business is hard. It's not always like roses and unicorns. There's a lot of like learning experience, I would say. But I think I've built an amazing team. Well, we've built an amazing team. Everybody's passionate. We're all coming every day, aligned on the mission of helping our clients. And that's what's making me the proudest. Yeah,
it sounds like a great thrill. Yeah. And I'd love to understand your thinking on your role and how you've seen it evolve, the CEO, and how it continues to evolve.
Yeah, so I'm not a manager, and I have no, like, before starting Tracktik. Actually, Tracktik is the largest company I've ever been to. So it's my company. So I'll just give you in perspective. So I never was exposed to corporate structures and, like HR and like everything that makes a company run well. Like, for me, it was all new. So, but then very early on, we, with Julie coming in, and then we had like a first HR person very, very early. So I surrounded myself with people that had that knowledge, let me focus on the mission and the vision of what I want to accomplish. So I think my role has always been more like product driven, solution driven, trying to find what's the next thing. So what keeps me like thinking at night and not sleeping is like, how can we improve our solution? How we can make our clients more successful? So I think that state of mind has driven the success of where we are, because we focus on the real thing, we focus on the mission. Now, as we get bigger, now we're at 110 employees right now. So 5 years in, of course, my role is evolving, and I'm going through another phase also of coming back more with management and picking myself more on the business side, realigning everybody on the mission. I think for me, like the hardest part I would say is like, how do I, add those crazy projects in my head of like crazy new ideas or features? So how can I delegate this? How can I make my team take the vision and start building them and market them? So that was the hardest part for me, as being like on the tech side and being I don't know, in French we say un patenteur. That was kind of like, when one night I'll put it together, so how do we go through regular process, being a challenge. But now I think I've seen the value in the last few months. I've built a team around me to like kind of like incubate the innovations back in the company. So now I feel like I have like very strong people on the product side, on every side of the company. So now we're like, okay, I'm seeing Tracktik fly by itself more and more. So for me, this is like, it's been the list. So I can take a step backward, and I think the way I can become the day I'm gonna be dispensable, like the company will need me to run, that's when I'll be successful as a CEO. Yeah. Right? Because that means that you've empowered people around you to take the decisions and make the business grow.
Yeah, that's a great vision, right? So being able to not be involved in every operational decision. And I'd love to maybe dive just a bit on something you've spoken about in the past about customer centricity, right? So going back to that notion of solving customer problems, how has Tracktik been able to systematize or operationalize customer centricity, right? Everyone talks about it. Every big, small company wants to do it. How do you guys do it? How have you achieved it?
Great. So client success, we have a department called client success, which for me, it's not a department. It's actually a state of mind. So, in the last 2 years, Julie was the ambassador of the client success initiative around the company. So in terms of automating this, so we got some tools that were actually, we have some software tools internally that are built on this, we measure client satisfaction, so the net promoter score at different part of the journey of the clients. Okay, so the first thing we did, like it's not really automation, is before you want to apply a client-centric approach, is you need to define your customer journey, and the customer journey is not only when they're a customer or a client. It starts with when they're looking for you. It starts when they're evaluating the risk on there, and then it starts. So like from a marketing perspective, marketing also has its role in terms of being client-centric. And the role we've been producing a lot of like valuable content to tell them about some of the solutions, some of the best practices, but not product focus. It's just industry focus, talking about something that concerns them, not pushing the brand, just pushing them content. Because we want to educate people of all of the experience we're learning from seeing those 400 companies. So it starts from there, and then it bubbles up to sales, and their sales like, we don't want to have used car salesman approach, and we've built an internal expertise and best practice. And when we talk about sales, is like, and I try to bring the values that we're not trying. When you call them, you're not trying to sell them something. You're actually trying to help them, because we build something that helps exactly them. You know, so then it goes from sales, and then when it goes into when we're talking about what we call the client success department, which is as the onboarding, training, account management. So what we do in this case is the first call that we have with our customers when they sign a contract is redefine with them what their objectives and their goals and their pains are, which we already do that through the sales process. But now it's like, okay, what do we want to accomplish first? And really focus not on like, click here. Like we want to focus on like, let's solve this issue for you.
I want to zoom out a little bit and talk about something you spoke about before, about how you're looking ahead at 2019 and how things like machine learning will have an impact. Yes. So what are you excited about? What are you looking at these technologies and how they'll impact Tracktik's product?
I could talk about that for hours, right? So I spend a lot of times with my clients, my dear clients, like, but not only like just talking to them to higher management. I think there's I spend some time in the field. I go lately I went to a dispatch center at night to see like how they're doing and all this. So what I realized, and from a business perspective, is that there's many human involved right now in doing tasks that they should be focusing on something else. Everything is repetitive. It's just, in my opinion, it's a waste of resources. Those people could be like talking with a client and be more client-centric. They could be in the field helping the employees to make the employees happy. But now, like I realized that because of the complexity of the business of managing that many employees working in different sites, is that there's many, I would call them unbilled hours employees, right? So these employees are there, but like, they do repetitive stuff and they're actually impacting the bottom line. So there's better use for those people. I'm not saying to replace them. I'm saying there's better use for those people to be like building a relationship with the clients, building a relationship with the employees versus clicking like 10 times at the same time. So, looking at, and I think if you want to leverage machine learning and AI, it's like, how can you replace the human decision? It's all about this, right? So a lot of people, it's not about this for us. Many people will we'll see what AI is for their type of business, for the company in the building here that actually go through, hospital scans, and be able to like find tumors better than the doctors can actually find them because they've learned from all of those positive scans. So for us, it's like, let's learn from, let's say, I'll give you a great example of a product we're working on. It's like all the schedulers that are like putting people doing last minute replacement, building all those schedules. It's a very intensive work, but very repetitive. And one of the reasons that, the planning / scheduling problem has been solved in other industries. There's like solvers for like what I call the IO constraints. So like distance, experience, skills, requirements, all of those regular planning stuff. So like, you have constraint solver that can like do 100,000 operations per second and find like the best schedule for that. But speaking with like very large companies and companies like of every size, no one is leveraging this technology. And I really try to understand why. I mean, like, you could like automate scheduling and like just automate the process for that. And I realized that the reason why nobody's doing that is because there's a human aspect to scheduling. I'll give you an example. So let's say you're the scheduler and you know that you get to know the people you're scheduling. You get to know their personas. You get to know their preferences. You get to know also what type of like aptitudes they have. Okay. And this makes you build better schedules that are going to make the employee happy and make the clients happy. I look at security firms as being like, it's like a dating firm. You're trying to match employees with jobs, and you want to make both people happy. You want to make the clients happy and so on. So we start digging into all of the human stuff, all of the human criteria that drives someone to take a decision on scheduling. And we modelize all of those in a way where the machine can learn from that. Okay? And actually start feeling for the employees and feeling for the clients. And we're building a product around it, so you won't need to, security firms can centralize their scheduling and just like, or almost put it on autopilot, while keeping all of the values of the companies of making their clients happy and making their employees happy. Okay? So this is a type of, for me, it's like, how do we remove that human from repetitive, non-worth task, but how do we keep the human side of things? And that layer of like bring humanity to constraint solver or AI, I find is one of the big challenges. But now the tools and the technology and the computing power now is available for it. 5 years ago, it was just a concept. Yeah. Now it's a reality. So
yeah. I can imagine part of your strategy is going to be also just given your footprint, the number of companies, the number of interactions, the more companies that you sign, the better that the predictions will be, the bigger your competitive advantage will be over time.
Absolutely. Because we're going to learn from like different type of persona, different criteria. Like and the system, the front end is built like when the system does a decision, and then a scheduler or the person using says, well, I don't agree with the decision. Then you say why, and then they can click on pre-made this, and then it start learning and try to understand what the person behaviors. Next time there's a similar pattern, it already knows that okay, that person did that for that reason, so I'll do that. And also, I give it. So, anyways, we could talk for hours and go into details of this project. It's like my baby project, and it's so good. And today, like, and we talk about technologies evolving, and how we always have to rethink this is a good example of like, wow, this is a problem that, has been solved, but not really solved. But now we can nowadays solve it.
Super cool, Simon. I want to be respectful of your time. Maybe one last question to understand what's next for Tracktik.
There's many things that are next for Tracktik. Like I mentioned, I think they're focusing on bringing the next set of values for clients. We've been growing a lot by expansion. So making our clients happy and understand how we can help them. Like we want to feel helpful for them. That's one. Expanding the team, expanding industries, expanding internationally. That's also on our plan. We started executing that this year. So now we have our first international employees. So how can we spread the love of everything that we're building across the world in more industries and so on? I think that's one of the focus. And also realign all the companies with all. We're growing fast. We had 50 employees in the last few months, right? So that dilutes the knowledge, that dilutes the message, that dilutes everything. It's like bring it back to and learn how to scale because we still want to double the next year. So
truly inspiring, Simon. Where can people find out more about Tracktik or yourself?
Well, I'd invite everybody that's looking for a great challenge. If you're passionate, I think that the number one value about Tracktik is passionate. Our entire team is passionate. So if you want to make a difference, if you love new technologies, you're a problem solver, I would encourage you to go see our website, come and see us. We have many positions open. We're always looking for talented people that want to make a difference and get shit done.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Simon.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Point of No Return podcast. Never miss an episode by clicking on the subscribe button on iTunes or Google Play.